I just wanted to make a quick video to give you the answers to this. It was easier for me to explain it than to write it all out. So let's see. So we're trying to figure out, is influenza endemic to the U.S.? Endemic means naturally found at a baseline level. And yeah, influenzas, we can always find influenza in the U.S. It's here. Is it likely to occur as an epidemic? Yes, we have a seasonal epidemic of influenza every year. We have kind of the winter months where we have the flu epidemic. Is it likely to occur as a pandemic? And that question is yes and no, because the seasonal flu is, I would say that's epidemics because it's happening at certain time of the year in certain locations. I would say that's an epidemic, not a pandemic, but we can get a flu pandemic if we get a new strain of influenza. Remember when we did viruses and we talked about antigenic drift? That's going to create our seasonal flus, or antigenic shift, where we have a brand new kind of flu. Those are the ones that could potentially be pandemic flus. And those are the ones we really worry about killing a lot of people because that would be a new kind of flu that people have no natural immunity for. So remember, things that cause pandemic are typically going to be caused by pathogens to which we have no immunity, that we haven't seen before. Cholera, the world's worst diarrhea. Waterborne bacteria spread by fecal contamination of water. Is it endemic to the U.S.? No. Cholera is rarely ever found in the U.S. Is it likely to occur as an epidemic? When cholera happens, it does typically happen as an epidemic. Again, I don't even know. I should have looked up numbers, but I don't know of cholera epidemics in the U.S. Anytime recently. But places where they do have cholera epidemics, I remember a really bad one in Haiti where I think they had an earthquake and then they got cholera. There were people already living in compromised situations, and then they were sharing poor quality drinking water, and they had a cholera epidemic. Is it likely to occur as a pandemic? Probably not, because everybody would have to be drinking the same kind of bad quality water, and that just doesn't really sound practical. Staphylococcal food poisoning caused by a bacterial toxin. Endemic to the U.S.? Yeah, we have staph food poisoning. Happens all the time. Is it likely to be an epidemic? A lot of times it happens as an epidemic. Maybe a company put out some food that was not properly treated, or somebody got it at a party. It could be an epidemic caused on a larger scale or a small scale, where a party or even just a family were eating some food that had a staph food poisoning, staph bacteria growing in it. So definitely could occur as an epidemic. Likely to be a pandemic? Again, not likely, because we'd all have to be eating the same stuff, and that's, again, not very practical. HIV or other sexually transmitted diseases, lots of STDs endemic to the U.S., and HIV definitely is. Likely to occur as an epidemic? We could still have STD or HIV epidemics that there's a higher, we have a certain number of cases all the time, but there could be an increase in people that have certain sexual practices, or maybe a new strain could come along that's more infectious, so there could be definitely still HIV epidemics or other sexually transmitted disease epidemics. A lot of times we say there's sexually transmitted disease epidemics in certain populations that have that maybe drug users, or the older people. There's some STDs that are more common in older people, so they might be numbers higher than the general population. Is it likely to occur as a pandemic? Well, HIV was a brand new disease, so it was something that was spread. We have no vaccination for, so it was a pandemic and spread throughout the world. Now we're living with it as being endemic. So it went from pandemic, and it first started off, HIV was an epidemic. There were certain places, particularly in Africa, where it started, and then it became a pandemic. and then eventually everywhere there's HIV. So it's endemic to everywhere in the world now. And the last one, Ebola. Remember, that's a virus that causes the bleeding from all the openings of your body. It's very deadly. It's transferred by contact, so secretions from one person to another. Endemic to the U.S., no. Is it likely to occur as an epidemic? Usually Ebola does occur as epidemics. It's something that we don't always know why, but just pops up in some places. And we think it's mostly zoonotic origins, but it can just pop up and not know why. So we can have epidemics. Is it likely to occur as a pandemic? Because it makes such dramatic signs and symptoms with the bleeding and all that, and it's transferred by contact transmission, you have to touch somebody, the likelihood of it being a pandemic is pretty low. Respiratory things or sexually transmitted things may be more likely to be pandemics, because you're not, like HIV, we didn't, you can't really tell somebody's infected many times. So, but Ebola, when somebody's infected, they're really sick. So the likelihood of it being a pandemic is pretty low. So there you go. That's it.